Hello, we're going to be in the book of Ecclesiastes today. And to start, I want to show you a few commentaries that I think will be helpful for you. This is by T.B. Matson called Words of Wisdom by Broadman Press. It deals with wisdom literature both in the Old Testament and in the New. And I think this will be helpful. Another little book, little paperback, if you want a small little commentary, this is Beyond Futility by David Hubbard, who is at Fuller Seminary. And it kind of breaks Ecclesiastes down to several kind of subject matters. And now for a Jewish perspective, Koleth, The Man and His World, a study of Ecclesiastes by Gardis. And this is from Schocken Press. It's a Jewish perspective. And then finally, my favorite, and I hope you know this series, if you recognize it, Expositions of Ecclesiastes by Loophole. And I want to tell you, anything Loophole does, I like. He is a good conservative scholar. And this book on Ecclesiastes you will find very helpful. Loophole from Baker Publishing. This is the one I recommend the most to you. Now let's get into the chapter itself. As I told you in the introduction, Ecclesiastes is we get it from the Greek Bible, the Septuagint, to assemble. And the Hebrew word koleth is the feminine form of the Hebrew word to assemble. And yet I still think the best title is the professor, okay? The words of the professor. Now, it shouldn't be the professor because there's no definite article here. There is a definite article in 727 and 12:8, but not here. So it's not so much a title, but a function, okay? The son of David, king in Jerusalem. Now, the Septuagint adds king of Israel, and it gets it down there from verse 12. But really, as I told you, I think Solomon is the background for chapters 1 and 2, but not the author. I think they're saying he had all this wisdom and all this money and all this power, and look how fouled up Solomon got. So I don't think Solomon's the author. It mentions in 1:12, king in Jerusalem, but if you look at 1:16, it says, more than all who were over Jerusalem. Well, the only one before Solomon was David, and so I don't know who it refers to unless it's the Jebusite kings. Some commentators get so nervous about this, they say, well, it's Melchizedek. But that's going a long way back to Salem during Abraham's time to try to explain that away. Now, notice where it says, vanity of vanities. Now, the word vanity is the word for mist, vapor, illusion. You might want to see James 14:14. It means nothingness, fleetingness, okay? Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanities. Now, what it means is the activities of life are repetitious. They go no place. There's no purpose. Life is meaningless if there is no God. Now think about that. Now in these next two chapters, he's going to go through a series of things that he tried to find happiness. He's going to go through wisdom and knowledge. He's going to go through pleasure. He's going to go through possessions. He's going to go through wealth. He's going to go through fame, popularity, and power. He's going to go through everything and say, meaningless. Well, boy, that is a pessimistic attitude toward life, isn't it? And yet, if there is no God, that's exactly what Camus and Nietzsche and Sartre were all saying. Life is a joke if there is no God. Our life is meaningless. We're nothing but animated fertilizer if there is no God. Now, verse 3. What advantage does the man have in all his work which he does under the sun? Now the word advantage can mean is his work abiding. Now the Protestant work ethic tells us we need to work, and we'll get satisfaction in production. Solomon says, baloney. Work ain't worth nothing if work is all there is. You know, the only purposefulness in work comes when you feel a sense of accomplishment. And I think we're learning more and more that once man gets the basic needs of life met, food and shelter and his family, then self-actualization becomes a real priority. And work without purpose is a killer. Now, notice where it's the little phrase, under the sun. I want to tell you, this is the key to the whole book. It's used in verse 3, it's used in verse 9, it's used in verse 13, 14, chapter 2, verse 11, chapter 2, 19, 20, 22. This to me is the key, and I want to show you why. He's saying, look at life. Is this all there is? If there is no God, this is all there is. But if there is a God. So the little phrase, under the sun, means life looked at on a human perspective only. It's vanity. Okay, that's the real key. Now, a generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. Life seems so cyclical sometimes. That's why the Eastern religions have built it on a cyclical view of history and nature and even of human life. And life, it does seem, things that happened are things that happened again. There's a repetitious, vicious cycle in life if there's no goal to history. Now, the Bible asserts there is a goal. And that goal, history, is teleological oriented. It's goal oriented, purpose oriented. Now, but the sun rises and the sun sets, and hastening to its place, it rises again. Now, the word hastening is the word panting. And here's the idea of the repetition of nature. It's the picture of the sun who goes down and has to run all night long to get back to where it started, the same race again, and go all day long and run like crazy all night to start. That Negro spiritual, that lucky old sun just rolls around heaven all day. Well, friends, is that true? Is the sun going to burn out in so many billions of years and that be all there is? Psalms 19, 1 through 6 gives a different picture but the same kind of metaphor. Is nature's repetitive cycle all there is? Well, I want to tell you the modern view of science is based on the orderliness of nature. But Ecclesiastes says it's just vain repetition. Now, in verse 6, blowing toward the south, the Septuagint and the Vulgate seem to apply this to the wind, to the sun, but it is the wind, seems like. The wind blows from here and there. It is so coming and going, but nothing seems to change. Look at verse 8. All things are wearisome. A man is not able to tell it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear fulfilled in hearing. What he's saying, the more I know, the more I see, the more I hear, the same old boring repetition it is. You ever feel like that? Everything that we enjoy doing, we have to repeat. And the more we repeat it, the less enjoyable it gets. Think about that. That's what he's saying. It's just that terrible cycle. Nature is caught in a rut. You might well see Romans 8, 19 through 22. Now look at 9. That which has been is that which will be. And that which has been done is that which will be done. There's nothing new. It's all been done before. It's all been thought before. It's all happened before. There's no meaningless, just a vicious repetition. Look at verse 10. Someone's going to say, there is something new. Oh yeah, this is new. Look at this. He's going to say, the only reason you think it's new is because you have a faulty view of history. Or history hasn't recorded the fact that it's been done before. There's really nothing new. It's just your ignorance or faulty history that makes you think it's new. That's pretty pessimistic, isn't it? Now, look at this. Look at verse 12. I, the preacher, have been, or was, king in Jerusalem, king over Israel in Jerusalem. All right? Now, the rabbis say that it was Solomon, and he went crazy, and an angel replaced him on the throne, and he later repented and came back, and that's how they can say, have been. But that's pretty wild. And I set my mind. Now, the Hebrew word here is heart, but then the Hebrew, the heart was the seat of the intellect. In our idea, it's the mind. For us, the heart's the seat of the emotions, but for the ancients, the lower viscera was the seat of the emotions. To seek and explore by wisdom. The word to seek means to look at something close, to look at it and examine it closely. The word to explore is the word that means to categorize and research a body of knowledge about some topic. Okay? So he's looked at it close and he's researched it from afar, this ideal of wisdom. Concerning all that has been done under the sun. And it was a grievous task which God has given the sons of men to be afflicted with. Now what's that? They have a longing to know. They want to know knowledge. They seek after truth. They have a driving passion to know. And yet they can't know. That's what he's saying. He's saying God's put in us an innate desire for knowledge, and yet ultimately knowledge is hidden from us. Now you'll find that in Ecclesiastes, although he's going to assert the existence of God, the goodness of God, the care of God, he is also going to say we cannot know God. We're finite and he's infinite. We're sinful and he's holy. We're the creature and he's the creator. And so there's no ultimate knowledge available. Verse 14. I have seen all the works which have been done under the sun, and behold, it is all vanity and striving after the wind. Human life, from a human standpoint only, is a vicious, dog-eat-dog, rat race society. Friends, if this is all there is, it is the pits, isn't it? That's what he's saying. Now, what is crooked, wicked, bent, cannot be made straight or righteous. And what is lacking cannot be counted. Now, the words for crooked and the words for straight are the Hebrew catchwords for righteousness and wickedness. God is spoken of as a measuring reed, and He is the standard by which we judge all things. All evil and perverseness are words that mean missing the mark, falling short, bending, being crooked. And that's the idea here. Verse 16, I said to myself, behold, I have magnified and increased wisdom more than all who were over Jerusalem before me. That's why I think it can't be Solomon. And my mind has observed a wealth of wisdom and knowledge. Now Solomon, traditionally is the wisest man in the world. What this guy is saying, if you were the wisest man in the world, you'd still be miserable without God. Now isn't that what 1 Corinthians 13, 1 through 3 is saying? If you know all mystery and all knowledge, but you don't have love and don't know God, it's nothing. See, facts are really descriptive of nature. They don't answer any questions. They don't solve any problem. Most human knowledge is simply descriptive. But what we need is relational knowledge of God and His purpose and will for our lives and our world. Let me continue. I set my mind to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. I realize that this also is striving after the wind. Now this seems to be a paradox. Some folks say that wisdom runs the gamut of you go wisdom this way, but on the same continuum is folly and madness. This guy says, I'm going to know the whole gamut of human experience. I'm going to know folly and foolhardiness, and I'm going to know wisdom. And he said the whole continuum is void of meaning. Wow. Sometimes we think if I just get a college education, if I just had a PhD, no, you'd still be a jerk. Because in much wisdom is much grief, and increasing knowledge increases pain. Friends, it took me, when I was a sophomore in college, I knew everything. The more I know I don't know. And what I do know, I recognize as presuppositional based on my culture, my experience, and my presuppositions. The more you know, there's pain. Pain in great knowledge. Think about that. Chapter 2. I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure. So enjoy yourself. Now he got tired of his academic pursuits. He said, I'm just going to live it up physically. Doesn't this sound like us, our culture? We just think if you have an education and you have enough money to buy what you want, if you got enough things, then you're going to be happy. Wrong. Knowledge without God is bankrupt, and pleasure without God is boring. How many rich folks do you know have all they want and are miserable? Now, look at this. I said of laughter, it is madness, and of pleasure, what does it accomplish? I explore with my mind how to stimulate my body with wine while my mind was guiding me. This is not wild drunkenness. He wanted to see, is there a drug I can take to make me excited? Give me a little more mescaline. Give me a little more LSD. I want to see if it really is a mind-expanding drug. I want to think through these things I take to stimulate me. Man, isn't that our culture? God help us. We're shooting everything in our veins, looking for peace and happiness and joy, and we'll never find it there. Here's a guy, what he knew was wine, so he's going to take that drug and see if he can find God. Now, notice. And how take hold of folly until I can see what good there is. He's just going to live it up wild and crazy and see what's there. And look what he says. To see if there are the sons of men to do under heaven. That's much like the phrase under the sun. And the few years of their lives. I enlarged my works. I built houses for myself and planted vineyards for myself and gardens and parks for myself. I planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made ponds for myself from which to irrigate a forest of growing tree. I brought male and female servants, and I had homebound slaves. I possessed flocks and herds larger than all who preceded me in Jerusalem. I collected for myself gold and silver and treasures of kings and provinces. I provided for myself male and female singers and the pleasures of men, many concubines. What he's saying, whatever my body wanted, I gave it. Wanted sex? I had sex with everybody. The background's Solomon, right? Friends, he had more wives than I have hairs on my head. That didn't make him happy. He had money, he had wealth, he had fame, he had power. And the Bible says in his old age, he went after other gods. You know, we just in a mad search for happiness, and the world keeps saying if you have the right kind of car, you wear the right kind of clothes, you have the right kind of wife, you drink the right kind of wine, you go to the right kind of places, you'll be so happy. You'll be miserable, because what we need more than anything is God. And human life, with all of its intricacies and all of its machines and all of its pleasure-oriented activities, without God is bankrupt. That's what he's saying. Now the foil here, the literary foil, is the wealth and pleasure and opulence of the palace of Solomon. It's nothing. He built all these buildings in his name. It says, for myself, for myself, for my... He wasn't a humanitarian. He said, I did it just to see if I'd like it. And it was nothing. Now the word concubines, that is a strange word. The Hebrew here is the word ornamental pools. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think many men are really turned on by ornamental pools, right? The other word, in Babylon, it means male and female demons. Well, I don't want no part of male and female demons either. In Palestine, it means carriages. Well, who cares? In the Septuagint of this it says, a butler and a female cupbearer. Now, concubine seems to fit the passage, the pleasures of men. But the word is never used that way, so we don't really know what that is, but it seems to be that sexual orientation. If I just had the right sexual partner, if I just had as many sexual partners as I want, I'd surely be happy. No, you'd be tired, and that'd be it. Now, notice it continues in, all that my eyes desired, I did not refuse them. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure, for my heart was pleased because of all my labor, and this was reward for my labor. He said, whatever I want to do, if it feels good, do it, was his bumper sticker in this experiment, okay? Thus I considered all my activities, which my hands had done, and the labor which I had exerted, and behold, it was vanity and striving after the wind, and there was no profit under the sun. You say, well, give me a little money and wisdom and pleasure, and I'll tell you, you'd be miserable. It'd be fun for a while. There's pleasure in sin for a season, but you wouldn't have meaning. You wouldn't have fulfillment. You wouldn't have purpose, and it wouldn't last. Why do you think so many rich folks commit suicide? So many movie stars get divorced and so miserable. We've been sold a bill of goods by the evil one that if we have enough physical, worldly pleasures, we'll be happy. It's a lie. And Coley hits that false view head on. We need to hear it in our day. Verse 12. So I turned to consider wisdom, madness, folly, for what will a man do, seems like mankind, and who will come after the king except what has already been done? And I saw that wisdom exceeds folly as light exceeds dark. What he's saying is, when I summed it all up, it's better to be smart than to be dumb, but even wisdom doesn't bring you happiness. You know, I'd rather be, if I got to pick intelligence versus stupidity, I'll pick intelligence, but the whole thing, there's no answer in there. There's no answer at all in there. Now, look at verse 14. A wise man's eyes are in his head, but a fool walks in darkness. And yet I know that one fates befall them both. This guy is such a practical person. He says, you know what? The smartest man in the world and the dumbest man in the world in X number of years are both going to die, and the worms are going to eat them. And worms are going to eat the brain of the smart man, and the worms are going to eat the brain of the dumb man, and the worms won't know the difference. Now think, if this life is all there is, what a miserable existence we have. For the more you know, the more you worry about it. Think about it. Contemplate your own existence, which is nothing. Now, then I said to myself, as is the fate of the fool, it will also befall me. Why then have I been so extremely wise? So I said to myself, this too is vanity. For there is no lasting remembrance of the wise man as with the fool. Inasmuch as in the coming days all will be forgotten, and how the wise man and the fool alike die. He's saying, look, no one's going to remember. 200 years, no one's going to care. No one's going to know if your IQ was so high or so low. Men just don't care. There's vanity there. Now, look at verse 17. So I hated life, for the work which had been done under the sun was grievous evil to me, because everything is futility and striving after the wind. Thus I hated all the fruit of my labors which I had labored under the sun. For I must leave it to a man who will come after me. Look at verse 19. This guy is so proud. He says, I'm going to work like crazy all my life. And part of the excuse in working like crazy is, I'm going to leave my kids something. Most of what we leave to our kids spoils them, so they don't know how to work or appreciate it anyway. And Solomon, Freudian slip, the author finally comes to say, how do I know my kids won't be fools and jerks and not know how to use it anyway? You see, what we spend our lives getting is sometimes a curse instead of a blessing when our children don't know how to use it and appreciate it. I think it's pretty good pragmatism. Work all my life for something, give it to my kids, and he may be a real jerk and not know how to use it. Read 19. Therefore I completely despaired of all the fruit of my labor which I had labored under the sun. Then there was a man who had labored with wisdom, knowledge, and skill. Then he gives his legacy to one who has not labored for them. This too is vanity and a great evil. For what does a man get in all his labors, in his striving which he is under the sun? He gets ulcers and nightmares and divorce and anxiety, and his hair falls out. That's what he gets. We live in a rat race society that says you got to push, push, push. You got to strike while the iron's hot. You got to grab the bull by the horns. You got to rise in the corporate ladder. So you are chairman of the company. Who cares? Who cares? You lose your family from neglect. You waste your body away with abuse. You worry yourself sick. And who cares? Nobody cares. You're going to die, and in 20 years no one will know who you are or care who you are or what you thought or what you did. The futility of life without God. Because all his days his task is painful and grievous. Even at night his mind does not rest. Can't sleep worrying about. People who have worldly possessions are always worried about how they can lose them. You ever thought about that? The more you got, the more you're worried somebody's going to take it from you. Look at verse 24. There is nothing, and this is a real key to this chapter, there is nothing better for man than to eat and drink and tell himself that his labor is good. This also I have seen is from the hand of God. Now here's the evaluation. If there is God in the system, say you're not the wisest man that ever lived. Say you're not the wealthiest man that ever lived. Say you don't have all of the things of life or the pleasures of life that you want. But I want to tell you what. With God, simple food, your family, and a sense of purpose in your work, and life will be good. The simple things of life are from God. They are pleasures that are meant to give us peace when we know Him. When God's in the system, we'll be happy with so little. But when God is not in the system, we can't be happy with the abundance of all things. What will a man give for his own soul? What will it profit a man if he gain the whole world and lose his own soul? What will a man give for his soul? What will a man give for peace? Now, look what it says. Let me continue then. For who can eat and who can have enjoyment without Him? Without God. God is the spark that gives purpose and meaning to life even when we don't have everything everybody else says we have to be happy. For to the person who is good, that means not without sin, but the one who seeks God in His sight, He has given wisdom and knowledge and joy. While to the habitual sinner, He has given the task of gathering and collecting so that he may give to one who is good in God's sight. Now, you might want to see Job 27:16 and 17, Proverbs 13:22 for the same idea. This too is vanity and striving after the wind. I hope, if nothing else, this chapter is able to shake us out of the devil's illusion that if I have more, I'll be happy. My brother and my sister, if you're not happy with who you are and what you have, you'll never be happy with anything else. For contentment comes in knowing who you are in relation to God and deriving purpose for your existence in Him and His will, not in you. No matter how good or talented or wealthy or whatever you are, life is a boring repetition of meaninglessness without God. Do you know Him? Augustine said, there is a God-shaped hole in every man. that will not be filled until we find God. You can try booze and heroin and sex and money and pleasure and power and fame and popularity, but you'll not find peace until you find a personal relationship with God through Christ in forgiveness and purposefulness. Look at the world. Look around you. Look at your own grave plot. Without Him, it is meaningless. I hope you'll look at the rest of Ecclesiastes. It needs to be read at one sitting. It's not a long book. You can read through it at one time and catch the overall picture, and then go back and take bite-sized chunks. Get the big picture, and do not proof text this book, or you can prove bizarre theology if you proof text it. The message is appropriate for our day. The message is right on target to a humanistic, materialistic, intellectually arrogant, technological society. Let it speak to you, my friend. There is joy in God. There is futility in man without God. I've enjoyed being with you. I'll see you again, same time, same place next week. God bless you.